My name is Hannah, and this is my beauty budget. Hey y'all, so this is the box in which I've been keeping all of the pieces of makeup that were wrapped inside my advent calendar of makeup I already own. I'll leave all of the other videos related to this project down below. If you haven't already, you can watch Julia and me create the advent calendar. She picked everything secretly so that I wouldn't know what was wrapped in each package. And then you can watch me unwrap each item day by day and use each item under duress on its day. So that's what each of those other 3 videos is. We only wrapped 21 items in the advent calendar. I wanted to be able to make 3 7-day unwrapping videos, and it was a delightful 3 weeks. I really felt like the project served its purpose, meaning that I was delighted to be reunited with most of these things, and I learned a lot about my relationship with each one of these items because of going through the act of opening it as if it were new, and in some cases because of having been separated from that item in between the time that Julia wrapped it up and the time that I opened it on its proper day. So I feel like I want to go back and reassess all of this makeup in the light of its inclusion in that project, and that's what I'm going to do in this video. It's going to be structured somewhat like a declutter because I think that some of these things are going to be decluttered in the course of this video, but it's also going to be a bit of a micro review video. I'm going to be reviewing the experience of using these products, even though I've owned them for a while, of being forced to use them on specific days over the past several weeks. Let's go ahead and get into the meat of the video. So I'm not going to go in the order in which I opened the things in the advent calendar. What I've actually done is to separate out the products that I reached for more than once from the products that I only used on the day that was their day, the day that they were unwrapped. So these products in the top row right here are the ones that I reached for more than once. As soon as I opened them, they were on my radar because of having been in the project, and I reached for them over and over and over again. So that shows me that no matter what I might think, in practice, these are the 5 pieces from this group that mean the most to me, that kind of carry the most weight in my collection. And that's really interesting. I think I maybe would have thought that Wild Ginger would, although I might have worn Wild Ginger more than just the one time, but it didn't spring to my mind as one that was kind of like made new again for me. But I think I'm going to actually go ahead and include it. I think I remember wearing it a couple of more times that week when I opened it. And in fact, some of the single eyeshadows in this little magnetic palette I reached for more than once even after they had been opened. Definitely the black one, definitely the one from JD Glow, and I think this bronze as well. So this one deserves a place in the top row too. But that's definitely it. I'm going to separate these out into 2 piles. I'll go briefly through my pile of favorites first, and then I'll go through and maybe do a little bit of weeding from the rest of these. I'm actually going to go ahead and talk about the gold palette first because it's blowing out my color balance. It's like blowing out the white balance because it's so shiny. So one of the cool things about having opened this in the project was that because of the timing, when I opened it, I ended up reaching for other shadows, not the ones that I usually reach for, and I ended up using it to make looks that are different from the ones that I habitually make with this palette. So as you can tell, I usually dig into the special shades, right? I'm always digging into brass, lime chrome, Kava is one of my favorites. Sparks right here. I mean, these shadows are just destroyed by love. And that makes sense because these shadows have the qualities for which I value Natasha Denona, I thought. But then a really interesting thing happened, which was that on the day that I opened this and I was under duress when it came to using it, I wanted to wear my blouse, my really bright fuchsia blouse, and I wanted to wear a really bright lipstick to go with it, like a red lipstick. So my desire was to put on quite a neutral look. And the other thing that had happened was that I had recently been playing around with some other Natasha Denona mattes and experimenting with working better with her mattes. I feel like I've kind of cottoned on to how to make Natasha Denona mattes work really well for me. And so I sat down on that first night after having opened this and I made a matte look. I used this shadow, one of the matte browns. I used this darker brown, and I think I might have used one of these paler browns. And then I used a little bit of shimmery brown, I think, but it was just a very nudie, neutral, sort of goldish brown look to complement other stronger aspects of my makeup. I was so pleased with how that look came out. It gave me a new appreciation for the use of the gold palette as a neutral palette. And I think in general lately, I have been gaining a new appreciation for Natasha Denona mattes in general. So I do feel like the gold palette has kind of blossomed in my estimation just in terms of its possibilities because it was taken away from me for so long. It was right at the end of the project. I think I opened it on the second to last day, and I was acutely aware of its absence that entire time. And when it finally came back to me, it was as though I felt an obligation not to just continue doing what I had been doing before with these shiny shadows, but to stretch my wings inside of this palette and to give it even more of its due. So I'm excited about focusing on loving on this palette even more as we move into 2020. I really want it to be treated like the star of my collection that it actually is. And I loved the way that I interacted with it through this project. I feel like it actually was one of the success stories of the project. I thought I was just going to be really excited to get it back again when I opened it. And I was surprised to find that not only was I excited, but I was excited to use it in a new way. This was another one that was never not my favorite, but the excitement with which I wear it was sort of re-revealed to me by its inclusion in this project. So it's the Bobbi Brown Crushed Lip Color in Bare. It's my perfect lipstick because the formula is, it's almost like chapsticky in its finish. It's got a little bit of a sheen, but it's not like it's a satin lipstick. It's just got a little bit of a sheen. So it's very, very natural looking. And the color looks really, really natural, really your lips, but better on me. It's also really comfortable to wear. And it's just the best. It's like the perfect balance of color, the perfect balance of finish, the perfect balance of formula. It's just exactly perfect. What that has meant lately is that it's been languishing in my collection because I've been reaching for more spectacular things, newer things, more exciting things, things that have this like promise of drama. When I unwrapped it though, it felt new, it felt exciting, it felt spectacular, and it felt like it was giving me sort of the promise of a kind of drama, of being reunited with it. And what I then proceeded to do was to wear it several days in a row, and I just feel like it's kind of got its groove back for me. I just realized that I had forgotten to include this in the box and I had to go fetch it. This is Charlotte Tilbury Birkin Brown, and it's definitely one that I've worn several times since opening it. But unlike this one, which was already a favorite of mine, Birkin Brown, I had never really connected to it. I think I was a little bit intimidated by it. I felt like it was inevitably vampy. I felt like the formula was always going to cling to dry patches. But this time when I opened it, I made it work. I kept my lips moisturized and exfoliated, and I wore it as somewhat of a stain, somewhat of a padded out stain. I wore it with lip liners, and I just became completely entranced with the effect of this sort of blotted rosewood color in conjunction with the makeup looks that I like to do, especially in the day-to-day. So this is one that didn't re-emerge as a favorite because of its inclusion in this project. It actually emerged as a favorite for the first time in its life in my makeup collection as a result of its inclusion in this project. And Tom Ford Wild Ginger, I feel like I did wear it at least twice, if not 3 times after I had opened it. I was delighted to see it again. It's an old favorite, but I also feel like this lipstick carries so much meaning for me, and it's just been spotlighted so many times in my life that it didn't necessarily need more distinction. Like, it was already distinct, it's already valued, I already attach a lot of romance to it. So this one was doing just fine before, but I was really happy to have an excuse to wear it a couple of times. It always surprises me how wonderful it is. And several of you have expressed concern over the Tom Ford lipsticks going bad. I think Tara Babies said that a bunch of hers went bad. This one is still going strong. It smells exactly like it did on the day that it was new. And I think that I might have gotten it under the wire after he changed the formula to remove whatever it was that was making the lipsticks go rancid rapidly. I think I might have purchased this after the formula change, given how many years it has stayed fresh. So those are 3 lipsticks that I really learned to love / learned to love again. And what a beautiful, diverse spread of colors it is. I really like that. The Slayfire Biodegradable Glitter in Sully, I just had forgotten how freaking beautiful it is. And I wore it to create a look on the day that I opened it. I think I wore it for the Poema photo shoot. And then I wore it in my look, I think the next day after that. I think I just felt like I couldn't get enough of it. And it's weirdly so dramatic because it's rather chunky, but also so easy to work into a look. And it seems like it's got a lot of blue in it, but it's also got a lot of rainbow in it, so it works well with almost any color scheme. It's just such a pretty glitter, and I do feel like I might be reaching for it more often since I had that experience of just being delighted with the looks that I came up with after having opened this. And then these eyeshadows, if you remember, I was forced to apply on a day when I really didn't need to be wearing a super dramatic eye look, and I ended up with a very, very blue and very, very shimmery look, featuring really like this kind of color story. Like it was kind of just like that all over my eyes. And I looked amazing and I went grocery shopping. And what I learned after that was that as much as I love teals and I'm really attracted to teal shadows, I just don't reach for them that often. It just doesn't occur to me to wear them that often. Whereas these kinds of colors do occur to me to wear quite often. And it was hard for me to keep my hands off of Unexpected from JD Glow because it was right there sitting in the box of opened Advent makeup, and I reached for it several times over the ensuing weeks. The Rowan Quad is kind of a no-brainer. I reach for it all the time, and so I wasn't surprised that once it came back to me, once I opened it, I started reaching for it all the time once again. One of the things I use this for the most is I use this lightest color, this kind of gold, to blend shadows, blend like the edge of a shadow from my crease up into my brows. It's just got this beautiful chunky creaminess, but it's neutral enough on my skin that it works in that capacity. So I reach for that a lot. I've been really digging into all of these. This is the one I use the least, this red one. And actually, because of that, on the day that I opened this, I used this one to make a look. I used it on both my eyes and cheeks, and I really loved it. I was reminded of how much I like that. So I've continued to use this all the time. I would like to make more of an effort to use this red more often though, because gosh, it's beautiful. It is the one of the 4 that has the least micas in it. Like it's more like a cream with some shimmer, whereas these other ones are really textured and crushy. So I think that that is actually why I tend not to use it. It's not so much about the color, it's just that when I open this, I'm always craving texture. And then the Alter Ego Daydream palette was kind of a surprise. I knew that I loved this palette, but new things again had kind of like replaced it in my attentions. And so I was surprised to find that the day that I opened it, I did really love the look that I made. I just put Cloud 9 all over my lid, and that was really beautiful. I love how it's sort of a mix of like a copper and a rose gold. It's a really rich, pretty color. But what happened after that was I proceeded to reach for this palette almost every day after opening it. And I did open the gold palette, so I used it once or twice. And then I also opened the star palette and I used it the one time. But of all 3 of them, this is the one that I've used the most since my Advent calendar project. And I've made a bunch of different looks using a bunch of these different shades. I feel as in love with it again as I did when I first opened it. And again, I've even been like experimenting with using the mattes, which I don't use much matte shadow, but I've been going into these, going a little bit into Twilight, which is like a shimmery cranberry to build looks. And then I did one where I patted Cosmos over the middle of my lids with a bunch of mattes in the crease, very traditional of me. And then I've been reaching into Star-Crossed a lot. That's another one of these like creamy, crushy ones that I love for putting up near my brows. So I mean, you can tell by how much I've used it that this palette really suits me. I love the formulas and I love the color story. And it just surprises me because it looks kind of neutral, but then the looks I end up getting with it aren't necessarily neutral. They tend to be really, really rich and dramatic. My love for this palette is completely rekindled, and it's kind of shot to the top of my list of the palettes that I'm most excited about using right now, even though it's not new to me. I would say this one and the gold palette are currently at the very top of my list of palettes that excite me the most right now, and it's definitely partly, for both of them, it's partly because they were in this advent calendar project. Let's talk about the products that kind of got short shrift from me even after having been wrapped up in the advent calendar. This Jouer blush duo, this is the Jouer blush duo in Adore, and it's gonna go. This is it. This was its last hurrah. This lighter shade, which I always thought was the one that would make me love this palette, it just goes a little bit gray on me. It's almost like the reflect, the very, very, very light reflect, because they're not shiny, they're just a little bit satiny, but whatever's in it creating that satin shift is just, it's like too silver not to look gray on my very pale skin. And even though I did get a beautiful soft draped look with this palette when I wore it, it made my skin look very matte because it's really quite a soft, finely milled, and just almost matte formula. I think this one is quite matte. Actually, this is the one that's a little bit satin. And overall, it just made me look very made up, even though the colors are so pale. And that's not the look that I'm going for with this color scheme either, and with the finish of my blushes either. So it's still in beautiful condition. I'm going to give it away probably to a family member because it's the kind of thing that I think that one of my cousins might like because the colors are so neutral. And then same, I'm not doing this on purpose, but these ones just happen to be right on top. Same with this Lila B Sun-Kissed bronzer. I mean, it's not the same because well, some of the reasons are the same. And one of them is just its matte finish. So it's a really beautiful product. It's not totally matte, but it's just the satin sheen is so slight. You can see it, especially in this darker one. You can definitely see the nice, beautiful sheen. It's just so light and natural. And I think that it's really designed for someone who wants a super light wash, like a very pale application of blush for a really, really natural, barely there look. And I really like going in, sorry, I said with blush, but I meant with bronzer. I really like going in and like sculpting with bronzer and making it kind of dramatic. What I want is a bronzer that's going to have a good sheen, but that's a light enough color that it doesn't super darken my skin. And this is almost like it's a bit too dark without having enough sheen. I think this will be really easy to give away. It's so beautiful. It's in barely used condition. Like I've just used it a couple of times. And even though I was perfectly happy with my look on the day that I used it, I didn't love it enough to want to keep using it a bunch of times after that. And that tells me that I can rehome it. Oh, sorry, these were out of frame. Sorry, guys. These eyeliners, let's talk about these eyeliners. So I actually think that I might have used this red eyeliner from Milani more than once. I think that I might have used it a couple of times after opening it. I don't remember just, being over the moon or anything, but it was kind of towards the beginning. But actually, I'm going to put this in the other pile. I'm pretty sure I reached for it more than once, and I do reach for this a lot. I love this eyeliner. I'm definitely not going to part with it. This one, however, the gold one, which is the Ardency in Modster liner in gold, it's just at the end of its life. Even though I sharpened it, it's just dry, and it really hurt when I was trying to apply it. So I'm going to go ahead and declutter this. I did get a lot of good use out of it. I sharpened it quite far down. And then this green one, I remember was kind of a struggle for me to use because of the other eyeshadows I was wearing that day, because I wanted kind of like a more neutral or like a more bronzy look, and it contrasted with that. But it ended up coming through beautifully, and I ended up really loving that. It was my Thanksgiving look, one of my favorite looks, and it's so creamy and well performing, so I'm going to hang on to this. This is an interesting case because I only wore it the one time, NARS Sheop, but I would never get rid of it because it's one of my favorite insane statement lippies. And it's appropriate that I only wore it on the one day because that's what I tend to do with this. I tend to save it for these specific days. I would love to get more use out of it. I would love to get so that I'm wearing it like once every 2 weeks rather than like once every 2 months, which is I think what it's been like for the past year or so. So I am going to try to prioritize this in 2020. I would love to be someone who wears NARS Sheop on a more regular basis than I do. I'm glad that it was in the advent calendar because it reminded me of how much I love it. This Anna Sui lipstick, however, I feel like I can't let it go because it's so practical, but in terms of my straight up emotions about it, I kind of want to put it on the chopping block. I just feel like I have so many lipsticks, and yet another one, especially when it's just a tool that I use to lighten other lipsticks, it just feels like excess. But I do know that on those occasions when I need this, I'm really glad to have it. And I don't really have anything that performs at this level in terms of lightening other lipsticks. So just in my own best interest, I think I'm going to hang on to this for now. Opening this CoverGirl Exhibitionist liquid eyeshadow and being forced to use it on a day that didn't work for me, I think showed me that I don't want this anymore. And this just made it through the reckoning. But I reckoned with it along with some other shiny black eyeshadows, one of which is also a liquid. And the other one has a lot more texture, bigger chunks, and it's got some gold in it. And this one's just straight silver sheen. So I feel like if I want this effect, I'm going to be much happier reaching for a black powder eyeshadow with silver sheen in it, like the one from L'Oreal that I have. It's just extra. I wasn't excited to open it. I wasn't excited to use it. And it showed me that when it made it through my recent reckoning, that was just because I have a voracious hunger for shiny dark black right now. And so it was hard for me to fathom letting go of one. But in practice, which is what happened when it was in this project, it got put into practice, I realized the error of my ways. So I'm going to give this away too. Urban Decay Midnight Cowboy Liquid Liner. I loved wearing this on the day that I opened it. And I actually had a Midnight Cowboy that I used to use a lot, and I had it for so long that it went bad. It got all separated and weird in the tube. So I'm glad to have a replacement for that, because I wouldn't have purchased a replacement. Even standard products that I use a lot, when they go bad or they get used up, I tend to just wait it out and see how I do without them. But because Urban Decay sent this to me in PR, I'm really excited to have it back in my collection. So I'm going to keep this. The Fenty Diamond Balm is clearly a well-loved product for me. And even though I only used it the one time, which was on the day that I opened it, which shows me that it's not at the top for me right now. Like, it's not hyper on my radar right now. That's okay. I think in this case, that doesn't mean that this is a product that I'm ready to let go of. It just means that it's sort of waiting for its day to return again. And maybe its day never will return for me, but if it doesn't, then I'll give it away once I'm sure that has happened. This is the other thing. When I unwrapped it, the bottom snapped off, and I've never been able to get it quite fixed. Anyway, I don't want to get rid of this, even though I haven't been using it that much. I'm keeping it in my arsenal, and we'll see what happens. The Glossier Cloud Paint. This one, it's also not at the top right now, but I was really excited when I opened it, and I loved the look that I got with it, and I feel like I might pan it. I feel like I've made a lot of progress on it. And it's also one that was towards the end, so I didn't get as much of a chance to reach back into the box for this one as I have with some of the other products. This is a beloved product, even though my relationship with it didn't sort of like rekindle into rainbows and sparks and fireworks like it did with, you know, the Bobbi Brown lipstick, for example. That didn't quite happen when I opened this, but my feelings about it haven't changed at all, so I'm going to keep it. All right, the Sahara palette from, oh, where's bronze? Oh, it's in here. It's in here. I think that this palette, this little palette that Julia made, did not originally include this bronze color. I took it out of the Alter Ego palette and I took it with me one time in this little palette in my purse. And that goes to show you that after I opened the Sahara palette and I was reminded of how much I love this bronze, I kept using it. So that actually belies my claim that this was not one of the ones that I used more than once, because clearly I used it on the day that I opened it. And I think on that day I used some reds. I used Sierra quite a bit, I remember, and maybe Savannah. And then I went on to take this bronze out of the palette and use it at least one more time, if not more. So this one then can go in the first pile. It has the distinction of being one that I used more than once after I opened it. But I don't have the same obsessively fond feelings about the Sahara as I do about the Daydream palette, which is weird because you would think that this is my color story. Like, which one of these is more me? It's clearly the Sahara. Which one of these goes with all the colors in my wardrobe? Which one of them goes with my dark, muddy, grungy spirit? It's definitely the Sahara palette. I think it's the textures in the Daydream that get me. It's these mixed font textures, the ones that the Beauty News girls call it the meat patty texture, where it's not quite mixed. This palette just has the promise of texture and also of some rich color while still being a bit neutral, so it allows me to kind of go ham in other areas of my look. Well, this one is also quite neutral too. I don't know. I think it's because so many of these shadows are matte. And when I look into this palette, I see matte shadows and then a couple of shimmers. And when I look into this palette, I see texture. And that's why it wins out for me, even though the color story of this one is more to my taste. But both of them got used more than once, so that's exciting. Let's talk about my star palette. So the Natasha Denona star palette was the last thing that I opened. And this shadow is not the original one in here. Cosmo is actually a gold that looks quite a lot like Spectrum up in the corner. This has been switched out for a single just because I was playing with my palettes one day and I'm not sure where Cosmo is right now. It's like living its best life in one of my magnetic palettes, but I'm not too pressed about it right now. You just know that that's the wrong shadow right now. If you're curious about what the star palette's supposed to look like, there's supposed to be a gold right there. I have been stealing myself for this video because it's time for me to face the fact that this star palette is possibly the one item of makeup that I'm keeping for sentimental reasons. This is the oldest Natasha Denona palette in my collection. It was pre-owned and then it was given to me as a gift. And the circumstances under which it was given to me are special enough to me that I really, really don't want to give it away. I don't want to depot it and declutter the shadows. I want to keep it. And I rarely keep things for sentimental reasons, especially not makeup. I'm not about that life, but there's something about the star palette that has my heart. There's something about what it represents in terms of the evolution of my YouTube channel, my relationship with you guys. It just holds a lot of weight for me, and that's okay. It just has to be okay. The shadows in here just don't perform as well as my other Natasha Denona shadows, especially the reds, especially these reds, which have become just incredibly patchy and dusty. I'll probably never use them again. Even some of the shimmers, like the one that I used on that day, is quite pretty, but it just has a bit of a dryness about it that my other Natasha Denona shadows don't have. That one still feels really, really good. Atria, that last one. Well, even it's got really good pigment, but it feels a little bit dry. And look at those reds, they just don't even exist anymore. I strongly believe that it's a matter of age. I think that this palette is years and years old and it's well past its purported expiration date. This one up here is still pretty, but it's definitely a bit dried out and it's hard to get the glitters to stick, and they don't quite have the shine of the glitters in the gold palette. And then even one like Spectrum, which is such a beautiful grungy gold, it just feels a little bit drier. I think that if I had purchased it myself, or maybe if I had received it as a gift under less extraordinary circumstances, then at this point it might be time to let it go. I might be making that decision because of the experience I had with it after opening it in my advent calendar. But that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and keep my little star palette for now. I still love it so much, and that's the confession that I have for you today. I'm keeping something for sentimental reasons, and I'm as scandalized as you are, but I'm doing it anyway. So here across the top are the items that I continue to use after having been parted from them and then being reunited with them when I opened them in the advent calendar. These are the ones that got some play after that. And there are 10 of them, which is great. That's almost half. That's almost half of the 21 products. So I love that for me. I love the fact that I continue to reach for them. It shows me that these 10 products are ones that I'm really, really actively delighted to have. And I'm glad that when Julia chose a bit of a random selection from my makeup products, that half of them were products with which I have that kind of like urgent and immediate relationship. Then these are the 7 products that I only used on the day that I opened them, but that I feel confident that I'm going to be glad that I kept. Knowing that even after having opened them in the advent calendar, only use them the one time, it makes me think about these products, and it's making me want to keep an eye on them and to think about whether it's really worth it to keep products that have that kind of status. status, where they're fine to use, I like using them, but they don't then immediately make me want to use them again. And these are the 4 products that I've realized as a result of this project that I can give away to someone else. The CoverGirl Liquid Shadow, the Jouer Blush Duo, the Lila B Bronzer, and this is actually just going to get thrown away because it's all dried out. Needless to say, this project was amazingly fun, and it was also amazingly emotionally fruitful. It really helped me feel re-excited about certain products in my collection. It helped clarify my relationship with certain products in my collection, and it distracted me from the desire for a bunch of new things during this hectic season, this season that's full of advertising and sales and deals and new drops and new launches and drama and glamour. It was really fun to have presents to open that contained things I already owned, and to go through that same cycle of feeling of excitement and wanting to use the thing right away and discovering its qualities and putting it together with all the other things you're interested in right now. It was exciting to have that process with products that I have already owned for a while that aren't actually new to me. And the project did exactly what I was hoping that it would do. It helped me to separate out those feelings of excitement from the fact of something's actual newness. And it reminded me that I can generate those feelings of excitement myself just by paying a little bit closer attention to what I have and just being more grateful and just putting more mindfulness into the way that I assess my makeup collection. A trick like this, wrapping them all up in Christmas wrapping paper and boxes and having them be mysteries and open them, a trick like this works great. It helps to generate that excitement without me having to do any of the emotional work. But it reminded me that I can generate that excitement just by being a little more mindful. I don't necessarily need to wrap things up in a box. I can just take a minute, look through my collection, dig things out, remind myself to wear them, and most of those same feelings will emerge. It doesn't have to be an advent calendar every day of the year. And that is it. These guys are going to all go back into their places in my makeup storage. These 4 are going to go, no, these 3 are going to go into my giveaway box. This one's going to go into the garbage. And I hope that this was as fun for you as it was for me. I know that some of you have been inspired to do similar projects of your own, and that has been awesome to hear about. I love it when you tag me on Instagram and show your projects or talk about them. It's been really, really fun to connect to some of you over this. Thank you for watching, and let me know what you think down below. And don't forget to take extra good care of yourself this week so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work.